Welcome to Module 5 on about the ADHD effect on relationships. Before we start, let's get present. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. Scan the body from head to toe. And then just check in with the mind. And just put any worries or concerns aside while we set the intention to get present to the ADHD effect on relationships. And slowly opening the eyes, coming back. So today's module is about ADHD effect on relationships. You may have heard of it already, but it really is the elephant in the room. So let's look at why. Before we go into it, just think about what you've achieved so far. What did you take on last week? And what results did you get? And did you celebrate them? So what is the ADHD effect? That's what we're going to be exploring. We're going to look at the predictable patterns in relationships, and then I'm going to introduce you to the 6 steps to rebuild relationships presented by Melissa Orlov. And introducing mindfulness in relationships. How can we apply mindfulness to our relationships and self-compassion? So first of all, let's get present to what the ADHD effect is on relationships. So this quote is basically highlighting the obvious that ADHD can dramatically affect a relationship. Research has shown that a person with ADHD is almost twice as likely to get divorced, and relationships with 1 or 2 people with the disorder often become dysfunctional, and they just don't work. And we're often left wondering why and bewildered as to why they didn't work. So we're going to explore that a bit further. Let's introduce the 2 characters that really describe the ADHD effect. So we have the turtle and we have the tiger. So just have a look at those animals in terms of, kind of how you relate to them, whether you feel If you're the turtle or the tiger, just get present to that. So in this context, the turtle relates to the non-ADHD partner. So this is how the partner feels. They feel overwhelmed with responsibility. They feel they're carrying the weight of everything. There's frustration, there's anger. They feel neglected. They feel ignored. And there's lack of trust, and they feel lack of empathy. Now, the tiger relates to the ADHD partner. And the key characteristics are, again, frustration, anger, shame, confusion, fear of failure, and just bewilderment on how arguments start. They feel unloved, not listened to, and they just snap out. There's low self-esteem, and they're disconnected from their body. So just to get present to how the turtle feels and how the tiger feels, we're going to listen to some recounts from a non-ADHD partner and the ADHD partner.
If you are married to a person who has or might have ADHD, you might feel ignored and lonely in your relationship. Your spouse never seems to follow up on what he agrees to do, so much so that you may feel as if you really have another child in your home instead of an adult. You feel you're forced to remind him all the time to do things. You nag, and you've started to dislike the person you've become. The two of you either fight often or have virtually nothing to say to each other that either of you finds meaningful. You are frustrated that your spouse seems to be able to focus intently on things that interest him, but never on you. Perhaps worst of all, you feel intense stress from not knowing whether you can rely on him and feeling saddled with almost all of the responsibilities of the household, while your spouse gets to have all the fun. ADHD, or think you do, you may feel as if the person you married is buried deep within a nagging monster that lives in your home. The person you had cherished has been transformed into a control freak, trying to manage every single detail of your life together. No matter how hard you try, you can never do well enough for your spouse, even if you are successful elsewhere, such as in your work. The easiest way to deal with her is simply to leave her alone. You're willing to admit that you make mistakes sometimes, but so does she, and certainly, no one is perfect.
So Melissa Orlov is the expert in this field with ADHD and relationships. And she says one of the things that is really important to communicate is that there are specific patterns that reliably show up in relationships impacted with ADHD. And this is the ADHD effect. We're just going to look at that. But before we do, maybe think about how ADHD has affected your relationships. What are the common feelings that you experience? Do you feel like the turtle? Do you feel like the tiger? Does the partner or the other person experience those feelings? So as relationships are our life, as our life is the people in our life, then it's really important to get present to this ADHD effect. So we can understand predictable patterns in relationships. Let's look at that. The key patterns come down to three things. One, misinterpretation. So it's just not understanding on both sides the symptoms of ADHD. Understanding that not paying attention isn't I don't love you. Not completing tasks isn't I don't care about you. So number two, the symptom response cycles. So let's look at distraction. So sometimes if we are distracted when we're talking to our partner or anyone, any relationship, they're going to get the feeling that you're not really present and you're not really there. You know, if you're playing with your phone, you're not really there, you're not listening to them. And that can make someone feel ignored. It can make someone feel unloved, unheard. So we've got to get present to the response cycles from the symptoms of ADHD. And the way we can treat that is through mindfulness and being more mindful. The third pattern is the parent-child dynamics. So let's get present to this. So let's say the more organized partner takes on too much and does over-functioning, and the ADHD partner takes on too little and underfunctions, says to themselves that they can't do, they go into a child mode, and they don't take responsibility for what needs doing as part of the partnership or within the relationship. The result is chronic anger, frustration, and pain, especially if we had some childhood trauma, because we're reliving it, we're bringing it back into that relationship. So let's look at the consequences, because when we look at the consequences to this ADHD effect, we become aware of it and it gives us motivation to do something about it. It doesn't have to be this way. So we have lack of intimacy. You know, if we get distracted, you know, and we're not present when we're having a loving moment, the intimacy goes. Toxic relationships evolve. Lots of anger, lots of arguments. Lack of integrity and trust. And no relationship works without integrity. They can't. The other person cannot rely on you because you say you do and you don't. And when you do that over and over again, it takes time to rebuild trust. I'll give you an example. There was a Buddhist lady who used to be a politician in America, and she got to the point where she had enough of it. She said politics is just all about lying. And it took 2 years for the people around her to start trusting her again. The other consequence is the patterns keep repeating. So even though you don't want this thing to keep coming up again, it does, because you're generating it, you're creating it, unless you take responsibility. There's financial implications. You may not be fulfilling your potential and therefore there's an unequal financial arrangement in the relationship, and this can create codependency. Health and well-being suffers. Our self-esteem goes down. Depression, anxiety. So let's take a moment and ponder on these patterns and consequences and start to investigate whether these are present in your current relationships. And if you are willing to share, then please get in touch by email or go onto the forum and share about your discoveries. So we're now going to hear from Melissa Orlov, who is the ADHD relationship expert, and I've been in communication with to communicate this presentation to you with her permission.
Discovering that one or both of you has ADHD is just the beginning. Medication is the most efficient way to jumpstart treatment, but it does not effectively treat ADHD in marriages without the addition of behavioral changes. These changes must be voluntary. No matter how much a non-ADHD spouse may want to, she can't make her spouse do certain things, like be more organized or more attentive. Furthermore, these changes must come from both partners. Changes only in the ADHD spouse don't resolve the marriage's issues. We learned both ideas the hard way, mostly at my husband's expense, as I kept trying to force him to do things differently. The harder I pushed, the more he resisted, and the worse our relationship became. Sound familiar? I am asking you to come on a journey of change, not offering a quick fix. If I did offer that, would you believe that I can deliver it? The rewards of the journey are worth it. My husband and I have moved from completely dysfunctional to almost ridiculously happy. We are thriving as individuals and feel that our relationship is stronger now than it has ever been.
Okay, so you can hear from Melissa sharing experiences from her own life of how her relationship was completely dysfunctional and got it back on track. And the only way to get it back on track is if both partners are willing to change. That's the key point. So let's introduce the 6 steps now to rebuild relationships. So what are the 6 steps? Was cultivating empathy for your spouse, is the first thing. Addressing obstacle emotions. Getting treatment for both of you. Improving communication. Setting boundaries and finding your own voice. Reigniting romance and having some fun. Step 1. Cultivate empathy. What is empathy? About putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Understand what it's like for your partner. What is it like to live with someone that shows the symptoms of ADHD? Accept and take responsibility. Stop playing the blame game. The blame game does not work. Learn to forgive and let go. Do the loving kindness meditation to develop compassion for yourself and your partner or anyone you're in a relationship with. So understanding the reasons for our loved ones' behaviors, the abilities and the challenges faced by a person diagnosed with ADHD. Instead of taking those behaviors personally, it's the only way we can cultivate meaningful relationships. It's not personal. Take the self out of it. There's a very good book actually around that, is called You, Yourself and the ADHD. So treating the ADHD as a third party in the relationship. Step 2, address obstacle emotions. So start to notice what these obstacle emotions are. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it boredom? What is it that's getting in the way of a harmonious relationship? Then you can ask yourself, what role are you playing? Are you holding on to a belief or a view? Work out the patterns and break free. So get present to the disadvantages and costs of the relationship. Then overcome the powerful emotions with antidotes. Develop the mindfulness and make better choices. Step 3, get treatment for both. Living with an ADHD partner can cause depression. Join support groups for non-ADHD and ADHD partners. So you've got support on both sides. Consult doctors on medication if you feel that is the way that would be beneficial to you, or tackle it in a natural way with mindfulness, counseling. But leaving both untreated will lead to consequences. Step 4, improve communication. Yeah, each has to understand what the needs are on both sides. So set a time maybe to voice concerns or feelings. Use the NVC approach, identifying your feelings and your needs behind them, and then making reasonable requests. Be considerate to each other. Be clear about what you want from the other person. Be assertive. Increase the communication points during the day, because that builds trust through integrity. Create win-win situations. So Dr. Marshall Rosenberg is the founder of nonviolent communication. And he says this: understanding the reasons for our loved ones' behaviors, the abilities and the challenges faced by a person diagnosed with ADHD, instead of taking those behaviors personally, is the only way we can cultivate the relationships. He also said that every communication, there is a need behind each communication. So you can start to identify when automatic thinking takes place. You can start looking at that. All or nothing thinking. Am I jumping to conclusions? Am I using should statements? Step 5, set boundaries and find your own inner voice. So allow the time for yourself to create space for you and your partner. If you don't create space for you, then it just builds up resentment, and then it comes out in another way. Could be a passive aggressive way. Spend time with people where you can voice your own opinion and feel listened to. Think about what you do most of your day. Are you doing what you love? Be direct and don't apologize for your needs. You have a right to feel. If you don't feel, you're not alive. Expect resistance, but don't let it deter you, because when you start to set boundaries, when there hasn't been boundaries before, some people don't like it because they see a change in you. Don't let this deter you. Create the boundary, state the boundary, and maintain the boundary. Boundaries are there for your own well-being and not to control others. Another fantastic relationship expert, Esther Perel. Lots of videos on YouTube and TED. Love is a vessel that contains both security and adventure, and commitment offers one of the great luxuries of life, time. Marriage is not the end of romance, it is the beginning. Step 6. Reignite romance and have some fun. Insist on a date night where you do something together, just you and your partner. Or if it's in a relationship, to spend quality time with that person. Spend one day together and give each other undivided attention. Yes, undivided attention. No phones, no reading something else, no distracting yourself with other things. Be with the person. Get a phone jail where you can put the phones in the jail, lock it up, just put the key aside. Do fun things together. Watch a comedy together. Do laughter yoga. Find out each other's love languages and devote time to fulfilling each other. Pamper each other and increase playfulness in the bedroom. So throughout these steps, what we can do is introduce mindfulness into our relationships. So how do we do that? Well, we understand so how do we do that? Mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Let's apply it to our relationships. So it can help us by being present, more attentive. It lowers the negative emotional reactivity, so we're able to self-regulate those emotions. It enhances self-awareness and makes us more empathetic. So take a moment now and just think, how can you apply mindfulness in your current relationships? And finally, remember self-compassion. So you can search through the whole universe for someone who is more deserving of your love than you are for yourself. And that person is nowhere to be found. You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection. Even though it says anonymous, I think it's actually the Buddha that came up with that. So, how do we remember self-compassion? Well, number one, self-kindness. So be gentle to yourself, and remove that judgment. This monkey on your shoulder constantly should do this, should do that. Get to present to understanding yourself. Do the inner work. Number two, common humanity. Start feeling connected with others rather than feeling isolated. You are not alone. It's only a story that you tell yourself. and you alienate yourself away from others, it's an illusion, because we are all connected. When you suffer, your partner suffers. 3, mindfulness. Hold our experience in balanced awareness rather than ignoring pain and exaggerating it. So this is kind of where we tend to be over optimistic and everything's great. Yeah. Well, no, sometimes life isn't going to be great. Sometimes you're going to feel sad. And it's about recognizing it and treating all emotions the same and let them flow through you. So take a moment to ponder and ponder on self-compassion. How can you be more self-compassionate? What is it? Could you do? Could you be kinder to yourself? Perhaps pamper yourself, go and treat yourself to something, have a bath, massage, whatever it is. Maybe it's time to give that to yourself. Right here, right now. Because when we look at relationships, it's not just the relationship with others, it's also the relationship with ourselves. And if we're unkind to ourselves, we tend to treat others the way that we treat ourselves. So maybe it's the relationship with yourself you can rebuild with those 6 steps. And then start with the other relationships around you. So here's the invitation to do the work. Start to be curious about all the relationships around you, including the one with yourself, and just get present to the patterns that keep going over and over and over again. Start to apply the 6 steps and do a mindfulness practice. Perhaps join the mindful relationship course and get present to how to set boundaries. Get present to how to really incorporate non-violent communication into your life. If you have any questions, please get in touch. Happy to share any information to make the world better. Thank you for taking charge and celebrating ADHD. Welcome to leave some feedback or just get in touch through the website. Some of the resources that you can look at. So Esther Perel's 6 Secrets to Spicing Up Your Sex Life. Great talk. You, Me and ADHD, Gina Pereira on relationships. The ADHD Effect in Marriages, Melissa Orlov's book. It's essential. Please read it. And The Power of Self-Compassion, Christine Neff. Some of the other apps you can look at is Calm, Furley, Love Nudge. Paired is another one, a new one on relationships. So the next topic we'll be talking about is cognitive reconstructing. But just get present to we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. So is it time to rewrite the story that we tell ourselves about relationships?